We are all aware of the general perception that private schools are more expensive than government schools. But did you know the wildest gap in fees isn't at higher levels, but at the pre-primary stage? That is, the moment your child picks up a school bag and steps into basic schooling at a private school, that is when the real drain on your wallet begins. So why do parents end up paying the most when children are only starting out? And why does this expenditure not rise as education gets more complex in private schools? When it comes to education in India, private schools are seen as expensive. But what's striking is where this gap with government schools is the wildest. And that is right at the beginning when your kid is just starting at school. Let's look at some numbers from a recently released government survey to understand the cost of education in private and government schools. In rural areas, the average expenditure for kindergarten education in private schools is 17,988 per year. This is nearly 22 times higher than in government pre-primary schools, where the fee is just 823 rupees. One would expect this gap between expenditure on private and government education to increase gradually with higher levels. Data, however, shows the opposite. In rural India, a private primary school costs about 11 times more than a government one. By the time children reach higher secondary, the difference drops to about 4.5 times. In other words, the biggest financial hit in terms of school expenditure begins right from the start. Urban families also face the same dilemma. In urban areas, a year of private kindergarten expenses is close to 26,000 per year. In government schools, it's just around 1,600 rupees. Even here, as students move up, the difference actually narrows. While private education is still 6 to 8 times more expensive, even in higher classes, pre-primary levels stand out. Across states, the contrast is sharper. In urban Karnataka, private kindergarten education costs 49,271 per year on average, nearly 72 times higher than in government schools. This is the highest multiple among all states in urban areas. The gap between pre-primary education in government and private schools is over 40 times in Odisha and over 35 times in Rajasthan, Maharashtra and Gujarat. In rural areas, the difference was the highest in Chhattisgarh, followed by Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu and Gujarat and Karnataka. Gujarat and Karnataka appear in both the rural and urban lists, meaning the difference in expenditure for kindergarten in private schools and government schools is higher in both urban and rural areas in these states. What's also telling is how expenditure rises across levels. In government schools, the climb is steady, from less than 1,000 rupees a year in kindergarten to over 7,000 by higher secondary in rural areas. The expenditure rises at least 9 times. On the other hand, for private schools in rural areas, the rise is modest. Fees start high, nearly 18,000 in kindergarten, but increase only slightly to around 33,000 at higher secondary. The trend was similar in urban areas as well. The takeaway is clear. The cost gap between private and government schools is sharpest at the pre-primary stage. And within the private system, most of the burden is front-loaded, with relatively little increase as students move through the system. For more such videos, subscribe to The Hindu.